or because they drink alcohol, because they're poor and they're bringing disease with them. For all of these reasons, there was this nativist sentiment. And of course, we still have that here today. If you read the newspapers and the letters to the editor, there are certain individuals you can just count on to be writing letters decrying the immigrant population that we have today. What a lot of people don't know is that we had the Ku Klux Klan here active in the 1920s as well. We think of that as a Southern phenomenon. In history we're taught that this is something that happened in the South. It didn't just happen in the South, it happened here. This is something that we live with. It's a human trait, and it doesn't just go away. This is why I say history has lessons that we have to apply today. Yes, so this third party, all of these things are going on, and people are fighting back and forth, trying to find candidates to support their particular combination of views on those three major issues. So the political parties had a difficult time of it. They were falling apart. And the Whig Party eventually fell apart, and the so-called American Party, the Know-Nothings, picked up a very quick head of steam about 1854. Because their big lure was slavery, and they said, well, we're going to be hardcore anti-slavery, and that's where they really drew a lot of people away from the two major parties. But they were also nativist, and they had this second agenda, as well as being temperance people as well. So for a brief time, the American Party picked up the slack before the Republican Party was born and gained strength. And 1854 was a crucial year. In 1854, in Massachusetts, all but a handful, literally all but a handful of the legislature there were Know-Nothings or Know-Nothing supporters. The governor of Massachusetts was a Know-Nothing. And understand that the Franklin Company, which pretty much owned Lewis and Auburn, was one from Boston. Okay? In 1854, in Maine, a Know-Nothing supported candidate was elected governor, Anson Morrill. He wasn't necessarily a Know-Nothing himself, but he had the support of the Know-Nothing movement here in Maine. And the legislature, he had enough of the legislature behind him to pass legislation that was contrary to the interests of new citizens. For that, I need to buy a book. So here's the environment. There is this anti-immigrant sentiment going on, and Father McLaughlin is coming up every other week or so to say Mass after the chapel on Lincoln Street, and one night somebody sets the church on fire, and that's a story in itself. And the question is, well, why did they set it on fire? And one of the interesting things is there are a lot of complicated things going on in the city at that time. These other two churches are getting set up, the Baptists and the Free Will Baptists up across the street. And Father McLaughlin had asked for a similar either grant or purchase of land for a permanent Catholic church. And he had asked Albert Kelsey, who was the local agent of the company, if he could make a purchase of property. Albert was the guy who did the buying and the selling for the Franklin Company here locally. Albert said, well, I can't do that for you, Father, but why don't you go push a petition before the Franklin Company board down in Boston. And so Father McLaughlin went to Boston, and on his return, Kelsey's account of this is that the priest said that he would never converse with those people ever again. He had been not only denied, apparently, but was not treated very well. So Albert, who's here representing the company locally, has mills coming up and mills needing to be operated and built, and a city really to be built. This was a boom town. This was a boom town at that time. It was growing by leaps and bounds. And a big part of the labor force were these Irish who were willing to work for almost nothing. So Albert says, well, Father, what plot of land would you like to purchase? And the priest pointed to the map and pointed to that lot up there, and named his price of $1,500, and Albert said, sold. And he slipped the purchase and sale agreement into a stack of similar documents, sent it down to Boston, and where it was signed, one after the other, you know, the pro forma, the signatures were applied, and the directors down in Boston apparently didn't recognize the name of the new Bishop of Maine, New Hampshire, David W. Bacon, and so they signed off on the sale of the lot for St. Joseph's. Lyman Nichols, one of the directors, as Kelsey tells it, was visiting Lewiston sometime thereafter and wanted to know who had purchased the lot and for how much. And Kelsey told him Nichols was apparently just absolutely livid that sale had been made. And Kelsey says that his reply was, well, you can fire me if you want to. The sale was, the purchase was legal, and so it will stand. And so it did. So the Franklin Company made not an unconscious donation, but an unconscious sale to establish the first permanent Catholic parish in Lewiston and Auburn. So, let's see. A number of priests come in and out. The parish was formally established in 1857. Father James Durnan, and then there were 3 or 4 of them that were here for maybe a year or so. And in 1862, Father Michael Lucy was assigned to Lewiston, and he was going to be here until 1874. So he was here for a good long time. And he was really the one who drove the construction of the church itself. And so the cornerstone was laid in 1864. This is nearing the end of the Civil War, in anticipation of money being available and people being available. And the rectory was built in 1869, or about 1869. Father Lucy had been in a building across the street at the corner of Middle Street, and where the DHS building is now, and that's where his rectory was. The building, of course, is gone now. They built this one right next door to the church. Back to the church building itself. One of the things that's neat about St. Patrick's, or St. Joseph's, isn't just the way in which it was acquired, but it was also the designer is important. And the church was designed by a guy named Patrick C. Keeley, who was from New York, was either an acquaintance, perhaps a friend of the new bishop, David Bacon, and Patrick Keeley is credited with designing some 160 Catholic churches east of the Mississippi River, and 4 of them here in Maine. St. John's up in Bangor is a Keeley church. The original St. Mary's in Biddeford. St. Joseph's here in Lewiston, and also the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception down in Portland. So it's one of a set of 3 at this point. And it's significant for who designed it, as well as its, the fact that it's the first Catholic church and the fun circumstances under which it was acquired. And as you keep going right from the church, next to the rectory is what's known as the Bonnelly block, and it's named for its first owner, George Bonnelly, and about 1881, George, well, he didn't sell it directly to the Catholics. He sold it to a couple of other prominent gentlemen, William Fry and John Scruton, and then they turned around immediately and sold the building to St. Joseph's Parish. And that's where the first St. Joseph's School was located, on the upper floors. Okay, the Sisters of the Congregation of Notre Dame were brought down from Montreal, and they served as the teachers. And during the Depression, there was there was a thought to build a new school building out behind this building, and I discovered that going through some plans down at the Maine Historical Society, and there was this church. It was labeled St. Joseph's. Oh, well, that got my attention, so I went and looked at it, and it didn't look like anything I'd ever seen or known about, and looked at the date and so forth. And yeah, it was during the Depression, so evidently the money just didn't materialize to complete that project. Is there anybody here that graduated from the first St. Joseph's? Somebody last week.
I went there.
Did you? Okay.
Do you want to see hands?
That many? Yeah, sure.
I think quite a few of them.
Okay. Well, if you did, if you haven't signed my clipboard yet, I would be interested in getting to know you at some point and getting some more detailed first-hand information on the building and the school. Now, some of you may recognize this building. It's along Main Street. And tonight's talk is a little heavier on the architecture, as you may have picked up on. This building is on Main Street. It was originally built in 1885 for L.L. Blake, a local furniture dealer, and was acquired by the diocese in 1913 for the Sisters of Mercy, who were then teaching at St. Joseph's School, amongst other projects. And that served as their convent until the property was sold to CMMC in 1981. And of course, just up the street from there is the new St. Joseph's School, built in 1957 on the 100th anniversary of the parish. It was designed by Alonzo Harriman, a local architect. And I believe it was in 2006 that 3 local parochial schools were consolidated at St. Joseph's. And those have now moved now, of course, to St. Dominic's Academy. So my question for you tonight is, who do you want to pass your Irish heritage, or any heritage for that matter, on to? Think about that, because I want you to apply it momentarily. I'm going to hand you a little note card, and what I want you to do with that, if you have a pen, would like you to, or a pencil, would like you to do it tonight. We'll give you 2 minutes to do that. What I'd like you to do is jot a quick note to somebody that you want to learn something about your heritage, or the Irish heritage, or the heritage of the Irish community here. The cards have pictures of various buildings that have an association with the Irish. And my idea is, I've spent a fair amount of time in education, and there are a lot of different ways to approach passing information on to the next generation. How many of you want to do that? Only 5 of you? Yeah, I mean, that's why you're here, right? You want to pass on to the next generation some idea of who they are and who their predecessors were, and so forth. And there are a million ways to do that. Some people do the genealogy. Some people, speak, just tell stories. Some people might, if someone knows the area well enough, they might take their children or grandchildren on a tour of significant buildings in their heritage. Well, I thought another neat way to do it would be to send them a note card, or note cards along the way with information. That way you're not beating them over the head, but if they look at the card and read the information on it, perhaps they'll pick something up. So what I want you to do is fill this card out tonight, if not right now, when you get home, and immediately tomorrow put a stamp on it and mail it to somebody.